Yeah, get my microphone adjusted here. What about the air conditioning? Is that going to rolling? All right. Oh, let's put that down.
Can you see that?
Yeah, it probably isn't going to show, but just okay. Well, Chuck, it's nice to welcome you back to Texas and to Dallas-Fort Worth, and especially to talk about your film, which we've been talking about a little bit here. Hero and the Terror, you being the hero, and O'Halloran, I guess, being the terror,
yes,
right? Yeah. Even though the title suggests lots of action, and there is a lot of action in it, it's also a chance to see you in a romantic sort of role. Now, what was the idea behind your doing that?
Well, when Ray Wagner, the producer of Hero and the Terror, who had also produced Code of Silence, brought the screenplay Hero and the Terror to me. By the way, it was the same writer that wrote Code of Silence that wrote Hero and the Terror, by the way. And I read it, and I really liked the screenplay. But I thought, you know, it's kind of a departure from most of the films that I've done, closer to Code of Silence. But I thought, if I'm going to broaden my character, this would be the screenplay to do it. So I actually took the screenplay around to my brother, who's the director, and my manager to get their opinion. And they suggested that I do the film. So I did do it because what Hero has over many of my other films is it has more depth. It's much more multi-dimensional than most of my films. Most of my films is Chuck Norris, the man in the arena, the fighting machine, which we have in Hero and the Terror, but it also has the other side of my character, the sensitive, vulnerable side, a man who has a relationship with a woman, who, a quick synopsis of the movie is, you know, he's a cop who encounters a killer that almost beats him to death. And from that encounter, being a police officer, he starts doubting himself and his abilities as a police officer, to the point of having nightmares of that encounter and having to seek therapy. And his therapist is a woman, and they become romantically involved. And she starts bearing his child. But she won't marry him because he has too many psychological problems dealing with this terror, this psychotic killer. And the relationship, I think, with my female co-star, I think, is really what builds this movie beyond what most of my films have, is that, in fact, the scene where she goes into labor, and I'm rushing her to the hospital, and you know, I'm doing the Lamaze thing, breathing with her all the way to the hospital, up the aisle, down the aisle to the nurse's stand, and I'm screaming, "We're having a baby, call our doctor," and I can't remember the doctor's name. Well, the scene just calls for me to be yelling for the doctor and breathing. Well, I'm doing this scene over and over again, and by take 9 or 10, I'm getting bored with this scene. So I thought, well, let's do something funny. I'm going to do a joke. So I do the fainting scene. I pretend like I faint. Well, everyone burst out laughing. And so when the film was being edited by the director, he calls me up and says, "Chuck, we're going to leave the fainting scene in the movie." And immediately I said, "Oh, no, I don't think so." I said, "I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it's going to look good for Chuck Norris to faint on the screen." And he said, "Believe me, it looks good." And he says, "Please come in and look at it." So I go in and I look at the scene, and I reflect back to when my wife had her first child. And I'm in the hospital, and she's in labor, and she's in pain, and I'm there trying to console her. And the helplessness I felt of not knowing what to do to help her. And here I am, a karate fighter, you know. And as I'm looking down on her, trying to console her, I felt the blood draining from my face, and I felt myself getting lightheaded. And I had to go to the bathroom and put water on my face. And I thought, well, you know, it's amazing how it parallels a situation that happened in my life. So we did leave it in there, and it's one of the more talked about scenes. And I think any woman that has had a child is going to relate to her, what she is going through. And I like that in the film.
And the actress who plays opposite you saying, "I'll never go through this again." Right. I'm sure every woman said that.
Absolutely. You know, it's amazing because my wife saw Hero and the Terror, and she's really not into action movies. And the only two films that she's really liked of mine is Lone Wolf McQuade and Code of Silence. And when she saw Hero on the Tear, she says, now this is real. She says, I can relate to this movie. Being a mother, I can relate to the relationship you have with this woman. And this is more of a real movie that I enjoy. And so she did like Hero on the Tear. And it does deal with a certain amount of reality. And men, I've had men who have seen the movie in screenings, said, I know exactly what you went through. You know, men that have had children, and said, I know exactly what you went through. And so it does deal with another side of the character, but yet you still see the strength of this man. But what this man is going through. Here's a man that has for the first time fears something. Here's a policeman who has tremendous confidence in himself, to the point of not waiting for his backup unit, and then is almost killed because of it. And now he's having to deal with his fear. That's why he trains so hard in the movie, is to try to overcome those self-doubts in himself as a policeman. And then when the terror escapes, now he has to face this fear. And if he does track down the killer again, he may be killed. If he doesn't track down the killer again, then he's going to have to live with his fear all his life. So he's facing a strong dilemma in his life. But there's a certain philosophy here too, because we all face demons in different times of our lives, and how we either succeed or fail is how we're able to face them. And that's what this man is going through.
Chuck, I wonder also, now I'm sure you're going to get some flack from critics and fans who say, oh, Chuck Norris has gone all mushy on us here with all this romance and everything. But I wonder if it isn't a very smart move in this respect. Given the way the summer movies have turned out, where one of the biggest hits is Roger Rabbit,
Yeah.
but given the way the summer movies are figuring at the box office, Rambo 3, big disappointment, did not do what it was supposed to do. Supposed to go through the roof, be bigger than the other two even, wasn't. So I wonder if maybe the public isn't swinging back a little, getting away from the violence and the hard-hitting action.
I think everything goes in cycles. And, you know, I have fired every weapon imaginable to man I have fired, you know. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of carrying Uzis in my hand. I want to get more to the physical, you know, personal physical stuff, which I do in this film. It's more of a hand-to-hand type combat fighting that I do in this movie. And there's some humorous action sequences. The scene with the drug dealer on the dock in San Pedro. I mean, it's a very humorous scene when I finally corner him, and he has no place to go except in the water or give up. And I say to him, you know, you have two choices. You can swim for it or you can give up. And then he turns around and challenges me, you know, and I said, well, that's a third choice, you know. And then the fight begins. So there are some very humorous moments in this film, as well as the romantic moments, but still the action too. But I guess the suspense is the thing. I think the key thing, Bobbie, is that people go to see Hero on Terror understanding what kind of a movie this is. That this isn't Chuck with an Uzi in each hand, but it is a cop that's, you know, trying to track down a killer in Los Angeles, and you know, he's almost killed because of it. But yet, and then his involvement with the woman, and I think the birthday scene is one of the nicest scenes in the movie too. When I take her out for her birthday, and here's a woman 9 months pregnant, and it's her birthday. And now this is a woman who's a professional woman. She's a therapist. She's in her mid-30s. And for the first time she's in love. And for the first time she's expecting a baby. And, you know, and my wife, you know, was relating. She says, I know that stomach's so big, and every time you turn around you're hitting somebody or hitting something with that stomach. And you know, and that's what she's going through in the restaurant. And then, of course, when I ask her to make a wish to blow out these candles, which looks like a small forest fire, and she looks up at the ceiling, and I said, what are you looking at? She says, I'm waiting for the sprinklers to start, you know. And then she starts wishing she wasn't fat and she wasn't ugly, you know, all the things that a woman feels in 9 months of pregnancy. So, you know, it really has some great moments in this film that I don't think I've really had in most of my films. Code of Silence, I had a lot of those moments, and Hero, I think, kind of runs in the same vein.
There is no explicit sex or any sort of nudity or anything like that in this film. Now, was that something that you had understood going into the film?
Yeah, if I'm going to do a romantic scene on the screen, that's exactly what I want. Not sex, but romance. You know, we've had so much sex on the screen, you know, there's nothing you can do that's going to make anyone's eyelids raise up anyway. And I'm more in the romance. You know, I want to show the tenderness and the love between two people, not the sexual moments. You know, that is left to the privacy of these two people. But let's show what they feel and how they feel about each other. And that's what I tried to bring out in Hero on the Terrace. There's these two people who are really in love. And she wants to marry this man, but he's got to overcome this problem he's facing with his terror before he can really deal with marriage. And that's what she's waiting for him to do, is finally face up to his fear so that he can live a productive married life. And then, of course, when he does finally face up to it. So there are, you know, these are moments that really give this film some texture.
If this romantic image catches on and is accepted, Chuck, then for the future, would you rule out any sort of really passionate, sexy scene on screen?
You know, I could never say I wouldn't, but my philosophy about doing films with relationships with women is I really want to concentrate on the romance. Rather, I would do a passionate love scene. It would really depend on how the director would want to do it, and if it's really conducive to the movie, whether I would do a strong, passionate scene or not. If it really made the film better, then I would consider it. But if it doesn't do anything, if it doesn't add anything to the film, then I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it just to do it. It has to do something for the film.
Now, you're a man who's been a family man, married your high school sweetheart for how many years now?
29 years.
29 years.
Yeah, I was 10 years old when I got married.
Weren't we all?
Yeah.
But out of deference to your wife, or would your wife's feelings have something to do about how explicit you would want to be?
No, you know, this is my profession, and and so I have to think of it as an actor, of what would be best for the film. And so if there's something that would make this film better, like a passionate love scene, I would do it. But it has, again, like I said, it has to make the film a bigger film, a better film.
I couldn't help but just be reminded when there is the scene where the two of you go into the bedroom and you close the door.
Yeah.
And then she says, "Oh, you haven't forgotten." How much like a 1940s movie that is.
Well, I think it's better to leave it to the imagination of the audience. When they see it, then there's no imagination left. So I think it's better to let the people think and imagine what is going on in there, and it's actually much better, than actually see it displayed on the screen.
And the audience isn't sitting there feeling like they're looking through a keyhole.
Exactly.
Yeah. What's next for you, Chuck?
I'm doing a film in the Middle East called America's Red Army, and it's a story about a crisis materializing in the Middle East that is threatening the world as a whole, that forces Russia and the United States to cooperate together and bringing their two fighting units, the Spetsnaz, which is like the American version of the Delta Force in Russia, and the Delta Force together to work cohesively together against this common enemy. Now here's two units who have trained to kill each other, now are being forced to come together to work in unison against this common enemy in the Middle East. And the whole story is about them trying to blend together as a fighting unit.
Back to the Uzi guns.
Yeah, but I think the story idea that hasn't been done before, here's between a cooperation between two countries who are ideology-wise is totally different.
Romance in this one?
I don't know. I haven't seen the screenplay. This is just the synopsis of the story that they gave me, and they're writing the screenplay right now. So I really don't know what the full context of the film is going to be, but this is the basic foundation of the story.
And where will you shoot in the Middle East?
I guess they're still looking for locations. I'm not really sure what areas because I know they're over there scouting locations right now. But with this writer's strike, it kind of held everything at bay. So now they're working full force on trying to get the screenplay finished.
Well, Chuck, as always, it's fun to talk with you.
Thank
You're
you.
a good interview.
What did you think of Hero? You know, being a woman, you know, and all this. Because I'm always curious, because Hero is also not only caters to the hardcore Chuck Norris fans. Hopefully, it will also cater to people that have not had an interest in seeing the film.
I liked the relationship
Did
between
you like the relationship?
and the woman, yes. And I could certainly appreciate what the man was going through, because I think that this is something that so many law officers live with, are these recurring nightmares. And the O'Halloran character.
Isn't he something?
Ooh.
Yeah, Jack O'Halloran, who plays the terror in this film, you know, he's about 6'7", about 280. And he's extremely strong. He's an ex-football player, pro football player, and an ex-boxer. And he's extremely strong. And it was very fortunate that I was in good physical shape for this film, because, you know, some of the action we do was very, very physical. And I had a hard time staying up with this big guy.
Yes, the suspense to the picture